What is up, everyone? Welcome to this live Locked On Cavs reaction to the Cleveland Cavaliers picking Ochai Agbaji out of Kansas with the 14th overall pick. As always, I'm your host, one of your hosts, Chris Manning from Diamond Up Rocks and Estimations for the Sword. Evan Damerl from Facebook's Right to Euclid here is with me. This is going to be the first 10 or so minutes of the show on Friday, but we're going to go live for the next 10 to 15 talking about Agbaji. Evan, what is your initial reaction to Cleveland going with Agbaji, the Final Four's most outstanding player last year, a 4-year college player out of Kansas, 6'5" guard out of Kansas? What do you think of it?
I mean, I think I can understand why some fans are disappointed, especially with AJ Griffin on the board, but I think Abaji was just one of the safer overall picks. And if you're a team like Cleveland, you need to grab guys that can play defense, provide athleticism and shooting. And Abaji checks a lot of those boxes, and I think you also have the luxury of him being one of the more NBA ready prospects. So you can kind of throw him out there right away and have him be your backup 2-3, maybe start him at the 2 at times if he fits nicely next to Garland. There are some concerns about his handle and just overall just dribbling mechanics in general. Excited to hear about the training camp and just camp battles between Okoro and Abaji on defense, but other than that, I think that if I had to give this pick a grade, I'd give it a B minus. I think it's a guy the Cavs have been interested from the beginning, and it makes a lot of sense for them. But I want to hear your thoughts on it too, because I think he checks a lot of boxes. But I'm also not in an NBA front office for a reason, so I need to see it on the floor as well before I really give my full thoughts.
Yeah, look, I think this pick makes a lot of sense. I think the best way to kind of look at it is say that it is very understandable. It makes a lot of sense from a needs perspective, from all of that. It's also just a pick that I can understand if you look at it and say it's boring. But I don't think boring is necessarily bad. Obviously, they went with him, over Malachi Branham, who just got right now picked by the Spurs at 20. There's other guys like Jalen Williams from Santa Clara went up before this. Usman Dieng or Jiang went before him before this as well, right? Like they went with Agbaji as some of maybe their other options go off the board. And then AJ Griffin is there. And I think, this would scream that maybe his medicals are a little problematic. And you're wondering if you're going to get something out of him. Agbaji is just like a very safe, clean pick. I'm not going to say that like he has the upside of some of the other options they could have gotten with because I don't believe he does. But I look at him and look as a guy that can shoot, can handle, at least like in like a very small way, can defend. I think this just makes sense, and I feel like this is a JB Bickerstaff player, and
Yeah.
I think again you
That
just look
that
at
that's another big thing is like this is
yeah
a dude who busts his butt on defense. Like this
yeah,
is a very much a JB Bickerstaff player.
and I think you just Evan look at the Cavs roster, and it's like there's just such a glaring hole at wing. This guy just like feels like a wing that makes sense for what this team needs and what they're going to need with Garland, Mobley now and going forward. I think B is probably a good fair initial grade, B minus. I get, but I like this pick just like makes sense to me.
It does. I would like to say that friend of the program, Trevor Magnotti, did point out that in certain lineups, if you want to go with bench units, you could really have Abaji be a point of attack defender. Maybe you play him with Isaac Okoro as well to really wreak havoc on the perimeter, and then it also just kind of relieves a lot of pressure to Darius Garland will face on the defensive side of the ball, especially if you maybe want to rest Jared Allen and play Evan Mobley at the 5 a little bit more next season. Like I think this could be the potential to be a quote unquote connector piece, as you would put it. But
Yeah,
again, need to see this in an actual NBA setting. But I think the fact that the 3 point shooting percentage, like that's real. I think him just being such a solid overall player, like that's real. Like I think the Cavs have a solid piece. And again, we talked about Brandon, we mentioned AJ Griffin. I can understand maybe the disappointment of not swinging for the fences, but when Usman Jiang and Jalen Williams are off the board, who I think maybe the Cavs might have had higher, it makes a lot of sense why maybe Cleveland goes for this. I think they had a lot of trade offers for 14 as well, but sticking with Abaji is always the right call. This is, again, credit to us, too. We've been banging on this drum since the very beginning when Cleveland was going to have a first round pick, but it's solid. Like, again, I want to see it in execution. I want to see how he's utilized by the Cavs overall, but this rounds out your rotation and also maybe mitigates the need of like playing Lamar Stevens or Dean Wade or guys of that ilk. No disrespect to those guys, but guys of that ilk, heavy minutes in your rotation, you can actually add quality depth on the perimeter.
yeah. People are just joining us. This is the Locked On Cavs live reaction. It'll be the first 10 or so minutes of the Friday podcast. Chris Manning, that's Evan Damerl. So Ochai Agbaji again is the pick at number 14 overall, 22-year-old wing, 6'5", 215 pounds. a 6'10" wingspan. I think, Evan, that when I look at this, I think specifically if we wanna look at this as, like, not taking AJ Griffin, who I think obviously a higher ceiling as a prospect, but the injury concerns, not taking Branham. It just seems like they have pretty much identified, like, a pretty we've hit on this, but, like, this feels like they just, like, we're like, "You know what? Like, we need this very specific thing. We maybe like some of these other guys, but this guy just, like, makes a ton of sense for us, and, like, we kinda just can maybe play the development game in other areas." I can understand that. I think if maybe, like, if you wanna say, like, that you gotta swing at 14 here, I can get that, but maybe this speaks to that they didn't I think maybe this speaks to they didn't have as much belief in Branham's upside. Maybe in him not getting to work out with the Cavs,
Hmm.
played a part in this. And maybe it tells you that, like, again, I think this kind of raises a red flag about the medicals for AJ Griffin, who I kind of thought made a lot of
Yeah.
sense if they were gonna stick with this. So yeah, I think that's where we're at here.
Yeah, I think the medicals with AJ Griffin is really why he slid in the first place. I think him ending up in Atlanta is not a bad spot for him either, but there can be legitimate concerns, especially if maybe this is a rookie you want to lean on, not heavily, but lean on a little bit more so than you maybe would with a rookie at 14, where you can say, okay, yes, AJ Griffin can provide a shooting, defense, and also upside, and he's a freshman, but his knees are very bad. Like, that's a very huge concern of his. Like, yeah, he was okay at times at Duke this year, but like, this is a problem that followed him back to high school, and like at the next level, that's an obvious concern too. Again, I maybe understand the disappointment with that, but I can't really complain much about this Agbaji pick. Like, people might like cite analytics as a reason when it comes to like Okoro and Agbaji, but like, the Cavs have a certain style. They like to grind things out defensively, but we talked about this the other day. They can continue that mantra and belief and mentality, but also maybe make it a little easier on themselves offensively. And adding spacing through Abaji does make things easier for them offensively. If you look at Mobley, Allen, Sexton, Okoro, you add another shooter to this roster in theory. Again, need to see it on the floor in actual NBA action, but it's a promising sign of maybe how they're going. Also, we're recording this live, so we don't know what happened to the other second round picks, but if they had three more rookies to the rotation, that'll also be fascinating. But, or not rotation, but just draft three more rookies in general. But Abaji's a good way to start, and maybe they start going for the upside plays depending on who falls in the second round. Because like Christian Braun was picked early in the or like late in the
Yeah.
first, so like, and he was like considered a second round prospect. So there could be a lot of fluidity, a lot of movement. The Cavs could maybe grab a guy that they could stash, and having three cracks in the second round could definitely happen or help with that.
Yeah, look, I think this pick is just solid. And I think, like, if you're looking at 14, you're looking at trying to get value out of 14. I think that makes sense. And Matt, we're gonna end on this. I believe this is friend of the program, Mac Robinson, says
I
it's an
believe so
interesting.
too. That looks like Mac taking a selfie in that pick.
It does. It's an interesting look at how Kobe constructs the roster with a winning team. IMO. Love following along with the roster construction, and I think that's it. I think if you look at this and you say, okay, they need this specific thing, and you look at this and say, like, this is the guy that fits it. Like, I think that makes sense, and this is a guy that I think you can look at and say, you know what, like, maybe the upside isn't there. Maybe we're gonna really have to have Garland and Mobley as he grows, and other people really cover for his potential limitations as a creator and a guy with the ball in his hands. But like, I just keep the more we look at this and you look at his shooting numbers and believing they're real and things, it's like he does something that I don't know if the Cavs have another wing that he does have that I don't necessarily think another Cavs wing can do, right? Like, this isn't what Okoro does. This isn't what
Okoro
this
cannot shoot out of the
yeah.
gates like Abaji can.
Yeah,
Like,
Abaji is a
Okoro was
yeah.
broken coming out of Auburn. Abaji is not broken, but there's like a little bit of a limited ceiling compared to
Yeah,
Okoro,
but
just in
like
certain things.
yeah, but like when you go further through this, it's like it's not. This isn't like Jetty Osman, I don't think who they clearly don't trust. This isn't what Levert does. This isn't what Windler does. This is just like clearly
Yeah.
like we just need
Well,
a
the
wing that
idea of
we
Dylan Windler.
right. But it's just like I think you look at this and say this is a wing we clearly feel like fits something we need, and I think that makes a ton of sense. I think like this is a
It
very
does.
easily justifiable, understandable pick. Again, it's not fun. I think people are probably having more fun right now saying like, "Oh man, AJ Griffin is our version of Michael Porter Jr." or like, Malachi Branham's this local kid with tons of upside, and like I can understand that. Or even Dalen Terry or if Jalen Williams from Santa Clara would have been there. But like this pick makes sense, and
It does.
that's where we're at.
For the Cavs are a team that was on pace to win 50-ish games before injuries and COVID and everything else hit them, and also a team that was also 2 cracks away from making the playoffs as either the 7th seed or the 8th seed. This is a guy who could maybe move the needle a little bit and help you maybe get to those spots because he's also a pretty good point of attack defender too. So Agbaji, people are asking like, do I hate it? Do I dislike it? I like this pick. I mean, it's perfectly fine. Like, it's nothing like super sexy, but like, it's a perfectly fine pick, and you can't be too upset about it because this is a team that could have made the playoffs and also not be picking at all.
As we wrap up here, someone that we've talked about on this podcast is a potential Cavs trade target. D'Anthony Melton is going to Philadelphia. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. We'll check back in later.
One more thing. Friend of this
Yeah.
program, Mac Robinson, did text me saying that's a selfie from LeBron's first game back in Cleveland 2014, so don't judge.
What a young
Matt was like 6 years old then, so it's all good.
Who let him have a cell phone at 6 years old? Unbelievable. All right, we're gonna be back on Friday morning, full episode. So you'll hear this will be in there. We'll react to the other picks the Cavs made, the other maybe trades that they make. You know, some of the guys we thought they might trade up for, guys they might try to go get in terms of, you know, maybe trading for D'Anthony Melton, trading up for Dalen Terry. Those guys are gone. But to me, Evan, we'll see if I'm going to put this out there into the ether to just give us something to talk about as we come back. Them getting that other second round pick from the Kings felt like a precursor to do something. And maybe I am wrong. Maybe they will actually draft 3 players in the second round. But we'll see where that goes. It feels like there's something else to be done here, but we will see where that goes when we come back for the second half of the show. Any final thoughts as we wrap up this live?
No, not necessarily. President of basketball operations, Kobe Altman, is now talking, so hopefully we can glean some insight on that as well. But I'm not too upset at the end of the day. Like, this is a solid pick for Cleveland. I think people will probably nitpick it and probably be disappointed. I think just the problem with the draft, there's guys you fall in love with, but overall from a team building concept, this makes a lot of sense for JB, and this also makes sense for the Cavs in general.
Yes. All right, everyone, tune in Friday morning. This has been Locked On Cavs Live. Cavs take Ochai, Agbaji.